Hello, welcome to the Book Drop. I'm Matthew Kachenda. I work at the Marlboro Public Library over on 35 West Main Street. Open from 9 to 8 Monday through Thursday and 9 to 5 Friday through Saturday. And we will be closed on Monday the 17th for President's Day. We at the Marlboro Public Library love. So we thought it would be really fun to do our very own dating show. So welcome to Have and to Hold, the only dating show where the storybook romances don't just exist on a page. Now let's introduce you guys to our characters. We're at our first contestant. Here's a hint. He's a cat. Oh, you know who it is. It's Cat in the Hat.
Whatever you do, whatever you say, please don't speak to me in that way.
Duly noted. Okay. Now here, we are at our second contestants. They suffer from possible mercury poisoning. They're from Wonderland, enjoy some tea. Mad Hatter.
Don't suffer from mercury poison, dear. I enjoy it quite a bit.
Fantastic.
Also call me Janine.
Janine? Is that your name?
No, I just love the sound of it.
As you wish. Our third contestant comes from Boulder, Colorado. Loves romance novels, long walks on the... Never mind, she does not like long walks on the beach. Annie Wilkes.
Thank you so much for having me on your little doohickey. I have a special project that needs tending to here in Colorado, but I do believe that the good Lord will bless me today with a romance like Misery Chastain.
So now we have our lucky bachelor, Matt S. from the Cirque Department.
Hi.
All right, quiet down, everyone, quiet down.
All right.
Now, we have him sitting behind this barrier, so he does not know who he is speaking to, so keep that in mind.
I'm here, and I'm looking for love.
Wonderful. Now, would you like to ask our first question?
I would. If you were to win, describe our first date.
First, contestant number one.
I know it is wet, and the sun's not sunny, but we can have lots of fun that is funny. Cannons are cheap these days. We travel to the tallest hill, and I'd shoot you out of the cannon towards the nearest Fleet-Flubble factory.
How does that sound?
It sounds like gibberish.
Great answer. Character number two.
Who are you speaking to?
Oh, Janine, I'm so sorry. That was rude of me.
Who's that?
That was...
I've never heard that name before in my life, and if I had, I would have promptly kicked them out of the party.
Hatter.
Let's go with that.
Okay, good idea. That was your guess, too. All right, Hatter. Answer the question.
Oh, well, I would pick you up precisely at 6 o'clock and we would have a tea party, of course. I love a tea party. And then I would serenade you with a song that you would hear. And if you didn't, I suppose I wouldn't do that. And I guess then it would be 6 again already. And so we would have a lovely game of chess or checkers, either one, which I would probably lead, of course. I detest that horrible game. Clean it, Cap!
I'm a homebody, if you couldn't tell, so I must insist on a cozy night in at my place. I could cook us a warm meal and we could talk about my favorite book series, Misery.
Ooh, I think that's my favorite answer so far. How does that sound? They seem feisty.
Yeah. Although I am looking to get into tea, so it'll be fun.
Oh.
Wonderful. I'll send you an invitation. You should receive it by March Hare.
March Hannah?
Yeah,
Is it a new month?
you'll get it later. You'll get it later. That's okay. All right. Second question.
So I'm really passionate about Bjork. What are you passionate about?
Character number one.
I know some good games we could play. I know some new tricks. I will show them to you. Your mother will not mind at all if I do.
That's a bit cryptic. What do you think about that?
That's kind of stupid.
Ooh. Character number two.
Well, tea, of course. I like all of the classics. Chamomile, sleepy time, cinnamon, mercury. As for other interests... Oh, I love a good riddle. Tell me, dear friend, why is a raven like a writing desk?
I don't know.
Neither do I! More tea!
I'm getting some chemistry between you two.
They're a little feisty.
Yeah.
I just adore the Misery series by Paul Sheldon. Are you familiar with it? It follows Misery Chastain, who I believe is a good Christian woman just like myself, on her romantic adventures, or so it did, until Misery met her untimely demise in the 4th book. But I have it on good authority to believe that Paul Sheldon will fix his gross mistake in the next book. In fact, a little birdie has informed me that I will even be the first to read it. Can you believe it? Maybe we could cuddle in front of a roaring fire and read it together.
I may take contestant number 3 for myself.
So before we get to our last question here, how are you feeling about each contestant?
I like the energy in the room here. And I'm excited to see what you answer for the next question.
All right. Here is question number 3.
If you could do anything once without consequences, what would you do?
Character number 1, please. We'll play a game called Fun in a Box. In this box are 2 things. I'll show them to you. You'll like these 2 things. I'll pick up the hook. You'll see something new. 2 things. I'll call them things 1 and thing 2. Cryptic again. Some people are mysterious. Do you like that in a partner?
I do like a little bit of mystery.
Very good. All right. Character number 2.
Consequences. I'm already living with consequences, so no consequences. Though I suppose, what time is it? 6 o'clock? I suppose no consequences are better than consequences, I suppose. I would say perform on the fantastic stage for the Queen, and this time she won't try to chop off my head.
Ooh. I don't really support the monarchy.
Neither do I! Except when I do. But I suppose I don't. So I must do anyway.
Oh, okay.
Clean cap!
We have a bit of a politician in the second one. She answers with every different answer. It's very interesting. All right.
Oh, I would follow Paul Sheldon, ensure his car has some unprecedented mishap that renders both his legs broken, drag that man into my home, and then force him to write a new Misery book that brings her back to life the way it ought to be, and then kill him once he reverses his crimes against the great Misery Chastain.
Hubba.
I mean, tax evasion.
Okay, so I will have a last word from the contestants. Are there anything that you would like to say before Matt S., the lovely bachelor, makes his decision? Wobbly Zoo.
Was that a question?
Yeah. Couldn't you tell?
Wobbly Zah?
Whoa. Someone bilingual here. That's exciting. Contestant number 2.
I have a comment that is both insightful and well thought out and very pointative.
Okay.
Get your hair cut! That is all.
You can't see through that. Interesting. Okay.
No, but I can tell that this contestant, this bachelor, has a mop of unruly hair. What is he doing spending time over there? He is supposed to be with me and Mr. Dormouse. We have an appointment at 6 o'clock.
She is determined. Wow. How do you feel?
Marty!
Ah, she's a drinker. Contestant number 3. Contestant 3? Seems like she may be a little preoccupied at the moment. All right. So, I guess before we start, this is just a personal question for me. How do you feel about people in big hats?
How big?
Pretty, like this size.
Like comically big?
I would never say comically big. I would never insult anyone like that.
I think I could get around with the big hat.
It's your lucky day. All right. Now they're at the end of the show. Are you going to pick contestant 1, a rapper, contestant 2, someone who will be getting my therapist's phone number after this, or contestant 3, who I have already picked for myself?
Do you like tea? it's mine.
Are they're talking to themselves or are they talking to me?
That's for you to decide.
I think everybody here have lovely answers. Lovely questions.
Thank you.
Lovely answers. But I think I'm gonna stay single.
Duty. I don't want you anyway.
Tea for everyone!
Wonderful. That's what we do every single week on this show. I am sorry to all three contestants. You're all lovely. Thank you for your time. Go back to wherever, whenever you came from, and I hope to never see you guys again. Thank you so much. This was To Have and To Hold. As always, February is a very exciting month for the programs that we have going on at the library. On Saturday the 1st at 2, we have the Jigsaw Puzzle Swap. So bring your puzzles and take home some new ones. Puzzles after 3 o'clock will be free to take no matter what. I'll probably take all of them, but there may be like 1 or 2 left. On Friday the 7th at 12, we have the tea blending workshop. Make yourself a special blend of tea from a selection of black, green tisanes, which I think I'm pronouncing right. Taking place several Fridays this month, on the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st at noon, we have mindfulness and meditation. These will be virtual meetings where you'll go over mindfulness practices and how to meditate. Personally, I've done a lot of meditation, and it's a wonderful thing I think everyone should try out. Saturday the 15th at 2, we have a concert, Crossing Over into Campground. This will comprise of African-American spirituals and piano works by African-American women composers, featuring baritone Ron Williams and pianist Olga Roback. Wednesday the 19th at 7, we have Democracy Talks, a migrant family's search for home in MA. Journalist Simon Rios shares his journey reporting on the plight of migrants in Massachusetts amidst changing shelter policies and shifting political climate. This one is also a virtual event. Sunday the 23rd at 9, we have the Last Chance Book Sale from the Friends of the Library. The books for sale here will be primarily library discards and other well-loved books. We will be talking about this event later, so stay tuned. Monday the 24th at 3, we have a no-sew special, Bags, Bows, and Pillows, a crafting workshop where you will create your own cozy crafts without the need for a needle and thread. Starting in February, specifically on February 28th at 10 a.m., we have the American Revolution, 1764 to 1774. These are a group of presentations that deal with the lead-up to the American Revolution. As part of the Marlboro Revolution 250, you can come learn about all these events as well as seeing books and documents that will be brought there by the Marlboro residents. You'll learn about the taxes that were imposed, the Townshend Acts, and building resentment within the colonies. With the stressful tax season coming up, the library will actually offer free tax help starting in February and then going for the next few months. This will be on alternating Saturdays, so make sure to call up the library and set an appointment and also to learn more. The Adult Book Club will be meeting this month at the 11th at 6 o'clock and the 13th at 11 o'clock. This month's book is Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. The novel tells the story of Black and Jewish residents of the Chicken Hill neighborhood of Pottstown, Pennsylvania during the 1920s and 30s. And this has been a very popular book at the library, so you do not want to miss it. The Book Bunch will be meeting on February 19th at 4 p.m. and the 22nd at 3 p.m. This month is reading My Weird School, Class Pet Mess by Dan Gutman. The Dewey Decimators will be meeting on the 27th at 5:30 p.m. and they are reading The Secret Library by Keklin Magoon. So I know we've been very goofy on this episode, and we have fun filming everything and sharing the library and information and stuff with you, but in sharing information and being educational, sometimes we have to talk about stuff that's very serious, and this is one of those times. With February being Black History Month, I thought it'd be really interesting to do a bit of a dive into the history of libraries in America in relation to Black history. Just like everything else, libraries are affected by the culture that they exist in, and in the case of public libraries, they're also government buildings. These factors can be really clearly seen in libraries in the South. Now, from the moment that libraries, public libraries specifically, were founded in America, which was around the 1850s, there was racism and there was segregation. Many of these libraries followed the separate but equal rule. But of course, the sections for Black patrons were much worse than the white counterparts, as it always was. There was less reading material. Reading material that was there was usually in way worse condition, and the staff was less trained. This was if there even was a black wing of the public library. A lot of local governments who were told to make black sections for the libraries were like, oh, we'll get to it eventually, because sometimes they wouldn't even have white libraries there. Not even this, but the children's sections in these white libraries usually had shelves stocked with books about racism and pushing race science and this idea of white supremacy. And this indoctrinated children to grow up hateful. During the early to mid 20th century, nonviolent sit-ins at the libraries started to bring some change. Many libraries were desegregated at this time, but some who were desegregated removed their tables and chairs, kind of making the desegregation pointless because no one could hang out in the library. Some libraries even closed voluntarily when they were forced to desegregate, and one that I looked at specifically was forced to reopen by a federal court. Libraries are incredibly important to society. Everyone should have access to education because education is enriching, education is freedom. And that leads us to freedom libraries. Freedom libraries were privately run libraries mostly in the South, with a lot of them being in Mississippi. They were run by activists who saw the problem with the current state of things and were aiming to make libraries more accessible. These libraries would also contain a lot more books by black authors and about black history than the public libraries did at the time. The people that ran these libraries understood how important books like this are for everyone to read. No history book can contain everything, which is why books like these focusing on different perspectives and facets of history are so important to read. There were countless people involved in the Freedom Library movement. It was a gigantic thing. But I thought it would be good to just focus our sights on one person. Gwendolyn Zahara Simmons, PhD, which I will come back to later. Gwendolyn was an activist who, during her second year of college, went to help in the Freedom Summer movement. Now, the Freedom Summer movement was a movement in 1964 to help voting rights for Black Americans and specifically the Black population of Mississippi. She was appointed to run the Laurel Freedom Library when she was only 18. And while she wasn't super confident in her abilities, everyone else who worked with her was, and they were right. She transformed a derelict dance hall into a working library in just a few months, and people used it. She organized volunteers and even stood up to law enforcement when threatened with violence. In the Freedom Summer movement, there was a lot of violence. In that summer of 1964, there were 35 shootings, 80 beatings, and 65 bombings. Now, 1964 is a lot closer than you would think, and I kind of want to highlight a little bit of that. The first thing to mention is Dr. Simmons is still active. She gave a talk last September specifically, and retired from being an assistant professor of religion, focusing on women in religion, specifically Islam, and civil rights in African religion in 2019. And she was also doing activism during this entire time. This woman has a LinkedIn. Think about that. This is all so recent. Simon Cowell, Flava Flav, and Weird Al Yankovic were all born 5 years before the Freedom Library Project in 1964. If you time traveled back to that summer, you would miss the first season of General Hospital, which is still airing today. This is all very recent history, and it's really important to remember that. These are pressing issues that we cannot ignore and that are still impacting today. Racism still exists, and exists very much. And the events in 1964 still have impact to this day. But also, there are modern day Dr. Simmons that are still active and are fighting every day, which is something we really have to keep in mind. And it shows that the spirit of goodness is still within us, and we have to cultivate that and keep going with it moving forward. If you want to learn more about this and to know where I got all of my information from, I read Freedom Libraries by Mike Selby. It goes into all this history. There are so many primary sources, and it's just chock full of information. I highly, highly recommend reading this. So now we're going to get into our favorite books written by Black authors. The first we're going to be talking about is Beloved by Toni Morrison, and this is one of my personal favorite books of all time. It is a historical magical realism novel about Seth, an escaped slave who now 18 years later is being haunted by the ghost of her baby and in turn her past. Her childhood of slavery left so many marks on her both mentally and physically, and honestly the book is pretty horrifying, as you'd think, but it's also incredibly emotional and gripping. Some of the most beautiful prose I've ever read is in it, and she's able to string metaphors through the plot and build them as they go along. It's a very, very important book. If you're somehow still not convinced, I'll end with this. 15 pages into reading this book, I bought another one of her books. Like, I immediately was like, okay, this is an author for me. Highly, highly recommend. Just like the rest of the books I'm going to talk about. The next book is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This is a historical fiction novel about Elwood Curtis, who is sent to the juvenile reformity Nickel Academy, a school that promises physical, intellectual, and moral training for its students. For the people there, they're not necessarily students, I should say. However, the Nickel Academy proves to be much, much worse than it seems. This academy is actually based on the Dozier School, which is a real institution that operated for 111 years, shutting down in 2011. This school was known for beating and torturing the people who were forced to go there and ruined countless lives. I believe in recent years, people have started uncovering unmarked graves built around this school. So very harrowing stuff, and again, a very important read. The next book we're talking about is Devils Kill Devils by John Kaufman, who I've actually talked about before on this show with his book The Spite House. Devils Kill Devils is about a character named Sarita, who believes she's been protected by a guardian angel her whole life. When this guardian angel murders someone she loves, Sarita begins to see the dark forces that surround her for what they truly are. The next book I'm talking about is A Master of Jinn by P. Djèjì Clark. This is a fantasy steampunk novel set in an alternate history Cairo where the Egyptians, with the help of powerful jinn, expelled the British occupation. The novel specifically follows Fatma el-Shawari, an investigator with the Ministry of Alchemy, Enhancements, and Supernatural Entities, as she investigates the murder of a jinn and strives to uncover dark magical secrets that threaten the city. Our next book is An Extraordinary Union by Alyssa Cole. This is the first in her Loyal League series, which takes place during the American Civil War. Ellie, a former slave, and Malcolm, a Secret Service detective, are working as undercover operatives for the Union, trying to change the tides of the war. As the two fall in love, it also becomes clear that they must go to extreme lengths to preserve the Union, even if it means sacrificing each other. Our next book is Heavy by Casey Lyman. This is a non-fiction account of what it's like to have grown up black in America. Through this memoir, Lyman narrates his journey from childhood to adulthood, centered around his life in Jackson, Mississippi, and later experiences all across the United States. The last book I have here is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is considered a classic of the Harlem Renaissance, and it follows the story of Janie Crawford, a middle-aged black woman, as she returns to her hometown in Florida after a long absence. To her old friend, she tells the story of her life, her coming of age, and her search for love. So as I mentioned in the program section before, we are having a second chance book sale on the 23rd of this month. And I wanted to give some more information about what exactly is the second chance book sale and what exactly is the lifestyle of books and why are they being discarded at the end of their lives in the library. So I decided to have an interview. Take a look. So as I mentioned in the upcoming programs for February section, we are going to have a second chance book sale on Sunday the 23rd. Now, it's a very interesting event, so I wanted to get a little bit more background behind what we're doing. So I decided to bring my guest here, the head of technical services, Karen Mattis, to speak with us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. So as Matt said, my name is Karen Mattis. I am the head of technical services at the Marlborough Public Library. And since the Friends are having what's now being called a second chance book sale on Sunday, February 23rd, it will feature primarily library discards and other very popular titles that have been donated throughout the year. We wanted to make sure, before anybody gets a little too hung up on that word library discard, explain a little bit about the process of how, the life cycle of library books.
Yeah, totally. So we know that the Second Chance book sale is kind of at the end of their library journey. So how does the journey start?
So we have a number of professional staff who spend a lot of time going through professional review sources. As you may guess, there are millions of books that are published every single year. And at the library, we only add about 8,000 titles across all age ranges and formats to our physical collection. So as a patron, you might be familiar with a resource like BookPage, which tells you a little bit about upcoming books that are being published in the next month. And as professional staff, we actually receive similar publications from publishers, our book vendor. We also attend a lot of webinars to find out even further in advance about all of the books that are coming out across time. So our staff has to spend a lot of time going through these and looking at what are the trends in publishing, what's coming up, and basing primarily on what our community is actually looking for, selecting what's actually going to be added to our collection every year. So that includes, like, in a lot of cases, we're primarily looking at holds, but we're also having lots of conversations at the desk, seeing, the subjects and the genres that people are actually looking for to help determine what Marlborough is actually looking for, because we are a very unique community, and we want to make sure that we're serving the needs of our direct patrons.
Yeah. We also have something on the website, I believe, that patrons can fill out, correct? Ask for books?
Yes, we do have a recommendation form available on the website that if there's a specific title that we don't seem to have in the collection, we're always looking for that feedback from our patrons.
Oh, fantastic. So you said that there was 8,000 books that we get a year?
Yep, that's just about what we added in 2024. And as I mentioned, that's across all age ranges, so the adults, the teens, and the children's.
Wow, that's a lot of books. Now, there is only finite space in the library, so we can't just keep every book that we have, and I can't imagine that many books get damaged. So what do we do to remove them?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there is, always the natural weeding process that happens as material gets damaged throughout the year. But you're right, even though we're in this beautiful brand new building, we were able to get lots of new shelving. It's still a finite space, and so we do still have to remove a few thousands of books every year just to make sure that we're keeping the collection fresh and new and have space for all those new titles that are coming in all the time. So very similar to the selection process, again, we have professional staff who are very familiar with what our patrons are looking for, and we do a very similar review process on the other end for all of the material that's on our shelves. So generally speaking, we're looking at things that have been on the shelves for a few years, and then we're just kind of comparing circulation, and we're seeing what's not circulating quite as well as everything else. And so that's usually how we're deciding what we end up removing from the shelves to make space for all of that new material.
That totally makes sense. I see you're having a book there. Is that something that we've weeded?
Yes. So this is one of the titles that we did remove from our collections. This was originally published in 2019, so it's had a pretty nice long life on our shelves, and it circulated pretty well, but unfortunately we just have newer titles that are currently circulating better. So this is one of the books that we've discarded. This is something that you will see at the book sale, because as you can tell, anything that we are going to be handing off to the friends for their book sale is material that is still in good condition.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, we're not going to be handing off the things that are weather worn or, the spines are broken or anything like that too much. So it's, the books that need just maybe a little more love, and they really need that second chance to find a new home.
Yeah. I think this is great. One of the best things about a library, it gives books so many chances to be seen by people, because you're not just having a book and keeping it on your shelf. It's for the public. So this just feels like a further extension of that goal. And I love it.
Yes, and what's even better is that anything that doesn't actually get sold at our friends' book sales actually go on to other book distribution sites as well, so they have the opportunity to reach other communities outside of Marlborough. But we do like to give our books to the friends first and give our community that opportunity to pick them up and take them home directly, because again, these are books that were selected for our community in the first place, and so it'd be nice if they can get the first chance at a second life still within our community before moving on to somewhere else.
Yeah. That's so lovely. I'm very excited to be doing this. I'm definitely going to be there. And I'm sure if you've been to the library, you may even see some books that you've seen on the shelf and you've wanted, and now you can get them. So, perfect. So I want to thank Karen so much for coming in and talking about the book sale. I want to thank my friends and the characters for being whirling dervishes on the show for everyone's entertainment. And I want to thank you for listening and watching this very important episode. Thank you so much. And as always, we hope to see you at the library.